Dozens of pages to flip through and learn from right on your mobile phone. Bibli is an online learning hub or library with a large selection of reference materials, audiobooks, and more. Now let's speak with its COO, Jyotirmoy Saha, here on the final word tonight. Thank you for joining us tonight, Moy. Young people now know whenever they need to to do research work, they either go to Google or the other available search engines for information at the data they need. But how is Bibli going to change that?
Well, thank you, first of all, David, for having me tonight. What Bibli is trying to do is basically democratize the access to that kind of material, right? So, if you look at in most countries around the world where there's a big disparity in wealth, how rich kids access materials and the access to materials that they have, and how the poorer kids do, it's widely different. What we intend to do is to curate a lot of content that is just right for the Philippines education system, what's prescribed by DepEd, TESDA, CHED, and all of that, and keep it under one roof, right, so that kids find it much easier to go and access it very quickly.
When you say library in the palm of your hands, how extensive would that be in terms of your collection of books and reading materials?
We are officially going to be available in about 2 weeks here in the Philippines, and you will find that every little topic in math, science, all the STEM subjects are already there, including every single learning competency requirement. We have a really wide variety of reference materials which are recommended by the Department of Education. We are constantly uploading even more, at least 2,000 new titles every month. We hope to have perhaps hundreds of thousands of titles by early next year.
You mentioned it's going to be a curriculum aligned resource.
That's correct.
You mentioned also about DepEd and CHED. Does this mean that you're working with these two agencies, which we know is largely setting up the kind of curriculum and syllabus that both private and public schools will be, implementing?
Well, we've, whether or not, we intend to work with all of these organizations, but our goal is to kind of make sure that we follow all the guidelines which are laid out by all these agencies, and make sure that the Filipino kids from every single region, every single socioeconomic class has equal access to all of that.
Your services will need little or no data, as
that is correct.
As mentioned,
yes,
in your website. Would that mean having to download these materials would also require mobile devices, whether it's phones or tablets,
right,
having to have a big chunk of memory to be able to download these materials?
Firstly, one of the first things is that in more I would say developed countries, the computing form factor of a laptop or a computer is very common. But here in the Philippines, the only device that every child has access to, either through their family or through their neighbor or their relatives, is a phone. And so, therefore, we designed all of the content to fit correctly inside a phone. And when we say that offline access is a very, very important part, Philippines is a country with 7,000 islands. There are a lot of places with poor connectivity. There are a lot of far-flung places. So we have created technology which is specially designed for the offline experience to be exactly as rich as an online experience.
I do agree with your point, Moy, because I'm from Mindanao, and I've seen many of the remote communities there do not have or little access to either libraries, physical libraries,
that's correct,
and education materials. This platform would be a big help for this community.
We hope so, and I think what we are trying to do is that we are trying to break that affordability gap and make it accessible to everybody. Reading, even if you don't, even if you're not interested in STEM or or your school topics, reading has a real lifelong long-lasting impact on you in your life, because it helps with comprehension. Right. One of the biggest things that help us be good workers when we are working among people. What somebody says, do I understand? Am I able to communicate properly? I think reading promotes a lot of that.
And it helps the problems of facing many poor communities, remote communities, in terms of access to education, no? To libraries, to books, because that's what we've seen in many of the remote areas here. You are also partnering with a streaming service, I understand, no? I mean, there's a possibility that you can now, to pass time, whether when you're traveling by boat or by bus, you will be able to download these materials, and then,
That's correct.
You can pursue your studies.
That is correct. I think what we are, a lot of that is focused on offline experiences inside transportation networks, ferry networks, where there is absolutely no connectivity at all. Really, the technology that we've been working on is to deliver content without any glitches inside these offline scenarios. And, in any case, Bibli already has a lot of educational videos, audio, books, tests, and so on and so forth. So this is just literally an extension of that technology into certain other applications.
We are set to reopen our classes, the school reopening in a few weeks. I'm sure learners and students watching now would be interested to be able to, access these services. Talk to us about affordability. I mean, how affordable these services would be for them?
Well, to start with, some of the very basic educational materials, the absolute necessary ones, they are largely going to be free, right? I think currently when the service is launched, we cover all of junior high and senior high syllabus, and slowly start encompassing, the K to 6 and also higher studies. Most of the simple materials that you require are all going to be free, so that's of course affordable. And outside of that, even the premium materials, we want to kind of create price points which are really, really simple for everybody to afford. I mean, our biggest price points that we have been talking about is that to a child who's interested in all these learning journeys, it should not cost more than 2 to 3 pesos a day, and that's it. These are, we understand what majority of the population, their socioeconomic class status is, what their affordability is, and this is designed specifically for them.
Of course, we don't aim to replace the physical libraries, right?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I think what we are trying to do is that we are trying to kind of encourage people to read further, and also kind of helping with spreading knowledge.
Right. Well, Bibli CEO Jyotirmoy Saha, great speaking to you tonight.
Thank you, David.